You've lived a great life and done well for yourself. But what mark will you leave on the world? How will you inspire future generations? Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand have helped thousands of people answer exactly those questions. If you've ever wondered, what will be my legacy? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Your Life, Your Legacy podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Stan and Katie Beth.
Welcome back to the Legacy Leaders Podcast. We're your hosts, Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand, and joining us today is New Hampshire attorney Michelle Creeden. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So before we get started, I would love for you to tell our listeners just about your practice and the different areas where you serve your clients.
Definitely. People come to us when they're struggling with debt and they may not be the best fit for a bankruptcy, or there's other issues where they don't want to file bankruptcy, maybe for a moral reason. And one of the things we do is help them get on a plan that's affordable to them. And then we reach out and negotiate settlements on a lot of the accounts if they're able to validate the debts. There's a lot of people working in this industry, but one of the things we do is try to assist the client no matter wherever they're at financially. So some plans might be more affordable to other clients. We're there to help no matter what someone's available capital is to try to resolve issues. And we do a pretty great job at guiding them through a process, usually in a shorter time than a bankruptcy would take to be less of a problem for their credit.
Okay, that is very interesting. So what are some of the unique things and the tools and the strategies that you use in your practice to help these clients?
Being able to think about the big picture is important. Sometimes the client will come to us and they'll want an account to be removed from the credit report. And the reality is they see that as the problem. And sometimes reporting is not really the issue. It's the fact that it's still collectible. They could still be sued for the debt. And if it's not resolved, that could lead to a garnishment in some states. So there's definitely a looking beyond what the client's asking for and trying to make sure we're recommending them have to use the right service to fit their needs, even if they're not aware of what they are at the moment.
That's great. Stan, I know you're brimming with questions. Why don't you hit Michelle with a couple of yours?
Yeah, this is interesting because you're practicing in an area that I've never practiced in. So this is entirely new territory for me. But one of the things that, I do practice as an estate planner, one of the areas that we do explore a lot with clients is how to leave wealth to younger generation family members, so that wealth is used and managed responsibly. And of course, part of our plan is to leave wealth so that it's protected, so that if the beneficiary, for whatever reason, does go bankrupt, they don't lose it. But a big part of the conversation we have with our clients is about how to instill values in younger generation family members so that they become responsible stewards of resources. So I know that a lot of the people that you see, I guess I'm trying to figure out how to frame this as a question, really. But people come to you for a variety of reasons. It may be that the reason that they're in financial trouble is through no fault of their own. But it also may be that it was through fault of their own, just because of their own, their immaturity, their lack of skill. I'm sure that having seen hundreds and hundreds of these clients in your practice, you've begun to have some insight about the experience that people have when they get themselves into financial trouble. And I'm just curious what sort of wisdom or insights you would share with a group of parents who wanted to be a positive influence over younger generation family members so that they ended up not being clients of your firm for this purpose, but hopefully for other better things.
Definitely. For that, education starting young is probably the best thing they can do, whether that's educating about a savings account, whether that's educating about making sure you're not using credit that's a bad type of credit for the kid. Education is a huge part of that, and most people don't have it in school. So we do actually take extra time to educate our clients about budgets, things that most attorneys don't touch, because it's important for them to have an understanding so that they can actually comply with the plan. And if they don't understand how to budget properly or make good choices, that can cause problems. Most of our clients are actually doing the right thing, but dealing with extraordinary circumstances. I would say we have maybe about 20% that are actually widows or widowers. And unfortunately, that's something that people even could be your clients that could be dealing with this, because they're used to a certain income level. And then when they lose the spouse that's the income earner, that really impacts the amount of debt that that person is able to carry. So we deal with a lot of times people who've lost the spouse. Either they were already set up perfectly by an estate attorney, which I have had the pleasure of seeing, where they have everything actually in a trust and it's protected, which I love. Unfortunately, that's very, very rare. So most of the time, if somebody does unfortunately lose their household, a chunk of their household income because of a loss in the family, that trust, if it's not funded, it's not going to be helpful. If they don't have a trust, it's not going to be helpful. They can lose their home. There's a lot of states that have protections for a certain amount of equity in a home, but not all of it. So there's the risk that they can lose their home, they can lose their bank accounts, they can lose any wages if they are W-2 earners, they can lose wages in all but 4 states. So there's definitely some significantly high risk involved with falling behind on credit. So maybe some education about that would be helpful as well. But really setting up good habits starts at home, that starts in youth. I do see some kids, like I was, to be honest, horrified to find out we had a client that was born in 1995. And to me, that's a little early to get to the point where you're carrying so much debt, you can't continue to pay it. And that's, it's unfortunate. It does happen. A lot of times though, our clients are not in that category. They're not in the, I drive 2 Jaguar category either. They're in the average mom and dad that are going through life and something throws them a curveball. Unfortunately, with the pandemic that we all just lived through, there's been a lot of curveballs lately. So people that have had the same high earning job consistently, that have had to take a much lower paying job, all of a sudden the debts that they were able to carry are no longer something that was a good choice. And unfortunately, that's something every one of us can make a choice about and do without thinking about it being a bad choice. So I don't add kind of too much value to what got them there, but I do want to make sure that they know there's options when they are in that position.
So Michelle, this is really interesting. A lot of our listeners are financial advisors. And one of the things that we've been serious advocates of is really meeting with your financial advisor to develop a financial plan. So what you're talking about is actually something that maybe with the right pre-planning, this person could have gotten in front of this issue and prevented the situation they found themselves in to just not happen, right?
Absolutely. So realistically, in the perfect scenario, they'd have a trust, they would fully transfer all their assets into the trust. And at that point, if things went wrong for them financially, their assets wouldn't potentially be at immediate risk. There's still some risk, and they could liquidate things and settle them, but they'd be in a safer position to negotiate because there wouldn't be things the creditor could get to. So we'd have a stronger position.
Yeah, but even also thinking about, this loss of income issue that you mentioned, there are, financial products that deal with that, right? I mean, that's one of the functions that life insurance serves.
Even umbrella insurance, unfortunately, most people don't have it,
Right.
or at least most from what I've seen, don't have those kind of resources available to them.
Well, I will say we are doing our best to make that less and less true.
I like that. I honestly, attorneys need it too. There's not, especially if you're working in a smaller firm, there's not a lot of options available to get group insurance for different things. And the more financial awareness and awareness of the insurance products available would help more people. I think that's great.
I love that. So Michelle, kind of taking a turn for a minute here, what is it that actually got you into practicing this particular area of law? What drew you to this?
Yeah, so it wasn't what I went to law school for. I went to law school hoping to do immigration law. And the reality is at the root of that was trying to help people who needed help. And I'm still that bleeding heart person 20 something years later, trying to do something that's going to help somebody who actually needs it. So I find it joyful to me that my clients aren't the 2 Jaguar driving people that just defaulted. My clients are usually people who desperately need help. And unfortunately, most of the other places they reach out to for help with debt are not good places for them. There's a lot of scams in the industry. There's a lot of one size fits all solution for everybody. That's not good enough for my people. So we do dig in and analyze what the actual risks are, what the best options are. And if it's not us, we'll tell them that. I often tell clients, a surgeon, you go to a surgeon, they're going to want to operate. You go to a settlement attorney, we're going to want to settle. Go to a bankruptcy attorney, they're going to want you to file bankruptcy. You have to be educated on what your options are. it's okay to ask what the pluses are, what the minuses are to going with whatever someone's advising, and then make sure that you know that as a consumer. I think educating consumers is really important and not done very often, especially in the financial world.
Absolutely. I love that. So through the work that you are doing, and I can see how passionate you are about that, what kind of legacy do you hope to leave?
I do want to help people, no matter what area of practice I'm in. I think that I've been very blessed with what I've gone through in life to be able to understand what people, not to blame people when they make choices we don't necessarily agree with. You're doing the best you can in the scenario that you're in, and a little bit more understanding and kindness toward that and trying to help people solve those problems without the judgment is huge. I want that lack of judgment in every industry. I think that we can do our clients a very good service just by being compassionate, because they're not going to make the right choices. I've been practicing long enough to know, unfortunately, some clients forget to tell you very vital details. Some clients lie. There's an element where compassion goes a long way. So I want my legacy to be helping people, and at least helping them feel confident or comfortable reaching out for help. And I think that oftentimes professionals have a hard time doing that. We see certain things as black and white, and having the compassion to welcome their questions can help them do a better job at what you're trying to accomplish and make it a group goal instead of you steering them in one direction or another.
Absolutely. Okay. One more curveball for you. So I noticed that aside from practicing law yourself, you also do a lot of the training for your firm. You oversee a group of, I think, about 20 other attorneys, and then you also train and manage all of the legal assistants. That's a lot on your plate.
It is. We're
On
working
top
on
of the legal work that you do. So for our attorneys and our advisors and all of our professionals that are listening, you're a person that is used to dealing with people and training and managing people. So what is the best advice that you could give to someone about training and leading a team?
Definitely. This may sound offensive at first, but go with me for a second. My best advice is to feel like you are teaching kindergarten. And I don't mean talk down to people. I mean, listen to what they're saying, kneel down if you need to, be where they are, and try to make sure you're connecting to that person in a positive way. Because a kindergartner doesn't mean to be offensive. They don't mean to be annoying. They might not listen directly to what you're saying if they're not looking at you. It's the right mindset to treat people with, along with compassion. So I would say, as bad as that sounds, I find that tone to be the most successful, especially when training. So using the tone that a good kindergarten teacher would use is incredibly helpful, because as much as you do the corny things that make them laugh, it brings them back into what you're trying to show them. So that's been a very successful tool to me when it comes to training, especially with attorneys. I know it's lame, but I pass out stickers. I have them share the screen when we're in a Teams meeting and show us their screen and try the task. Believe it or not, the way that most, and so I do it more professionally as well. I look at what their learning style is. I have them fill out an online quiz to kind of give me the idea of whether they're more kinetic learners or not. So there is a background of education there, but the reality is having them try a task, even if they are just audible learners, having them try to do it on the screen and share their screen is very, very effective for locking in a task. Especially my annoying trick is I make them do it twice. So it's once is good because they're going slow, but they haven't made that muscle memory, and having them do it again on a totally different file, but do the same thing again, it seems to work. So I definitely, just that patience and kindness and trying to make sure it's interactive, because all of us learn better when it's interactive and you're trying the skill. I learn really well by hearing things, and I listen to all the audio tapes through all the exams and stuff. But when you do it, you just are going to remember it better. So yeah, I definitely that as well.
That is great. That is a great wisdom nugget. So thank you very much for sharing that. I've never really heard it described like that, and I love it. I think that's fantastic. Is
Makes
there
total sense to
anything?
me too, by the way. So yeah.
It does. Yes. Yes. There is certainly a wisdom to that. Is there anything, Michelle, that we didn't talk about that you would like our listeners to hear about?
Actually, I know your office is a lot of estate attorneys, right? And planning
Right.
and so I definitely, I know you've probably gone over this a gazillion times, but trying to make sure that people follow through and transfer the assets into the trust, That's like, I beg of you. That is one thing that I feel gets missed every time I see it. And it's so heartbreaking because they'll have these beautiful documents that just aren't funded. And it hurts on all levels. You know, I've dealt with estates, unfortunately, through my own family, and having the documents not enough, and I know better. But unfortunately, other people don't. And so making sure that they have that proper instruction. I wish we could, as an entire attorney industry, make sure to follow through on that, because that, I think, has hurt a lot of families over the years. Sorry.
Absolutely.
It's my want.
No, we could tell you 100 stories about things like that we have seen go wrong over the years. So it's a good point, and something we have dealt with for sure within our law firm and in this industry in general. Funding is the most beautiful documents in the world don't do any good if you don't have it funded properly. So I appreciate that, and yes, that is something that is very true. Stan, did you have anything else for Michelle?
Yeah, I did actually. Before we sign off, I mean, I know we talked a little bit about your law firm at the beginning, but can you give us an idea of what your footprint is? I mean, do you guys limit your practice in New Hampshire? Do you have a broader practice than that? How big are, what's your presence out in the world?
Yeah, so we actually practice in about 30 different states. So we have people meet with their attorneys in their state remotely. They don't have an office there, and they all work on our remote servers. So it's secure over a VPN. We negotiate debts in all of those states. We try to resolve those. It's a pretty good sized firm. Our active client numbers have gone down since the pandemic, so we're still working on building that back up. But at one point, right before the pandemic, we were at 5,000 active clients, which was our bigger number for us. So we're trying to get back to that. And yeah, it's a pretty large firm, surprisingly enough, but it still feels small knit, tight knit, because it is a small group.
Yeah. So what's the profile? What would a profile be of somebody that would be a good fit as a client for your firm?
Anyone who's got a debt that they're trying to work through that feels like something they can't mount. If you're starting to slip behind, or if you're already behind, we're an excellent resource for information, whether we're the right fit for you or not. We are very knowledgeable about things like debt consolidation and all the other tools as well. So we'd be able to help you find the right fit. But in reality, a lot of people should know more about this industry, even if they're not currently falling behind, because there are people who could choose to default to save themselves a lot of headache and extra cash. Most of the accounts that we're settling at about 50%. So if you're a huge wage earner with business debt and things like that, sometimes that is the right financial choice. So financial advisors probably could learn a little bit more about this industry, and it might be a good product for them to be able to share, because the reality is there are a lot of debts out there right now that have defaulted over the last few years. And sometimes strategic default could be a good choice. I mean, I'm definitely not advocating it for most, but if there are people who are already know they're not going to pay off their debt in a reasonable time frame, it could be a good fit for a high wage person.
Good to know.
Yeah, I was not aware of firms that did this. This is new learning for me, Michelle.
Another
Yes,
way to deal with financial stuff. If I could throw out one other tip, I know we're almost out of time.
Go.
Thank you. I wanted to point out, not everyone is familiar with the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. This is a law that is deeply steeped in my world. People who are dealing with debt, someone's collecting, but it does come up from an estate level as well. So I wanted to throw that out there. If a collector is misrepresenting the debt, that is a violation of the FDCPA, and there is a statutory and actual damages option for that. It's basically a federal act that you can file, or at least bring up. The reason I think it's important to bring this up to estate attorneys is that, well, I lost my husband and I did his estate. Sorry, odd thing to throw in there. But while I was doing that, he had a debt with a particular loan company, and they sent a copy of an estate filing as if they had filed against the estate, and they had not filed. They sent it thinking it was going to intimidate us into paying it directly, when it was beyond the time they could have filed it against the estate. They had not collected on it beforehand, and then they sent it basically impersonating that they filed a claim they did not file with the estate. That's a huge violation of the FDCPA. And that's something that I think some estate attorneys who are actually dealing with the administration of the estates could see, maybe spot, and potentially use as a tool. Because as soon as you say the letters FDCPA with a collector, they tend to go away pretty quickly. So I was able to bring up the FDCPA in that particular scenario, and they apologized, said it was a mistake, that they were not filing a claim, and they went away. And so being able to have that confirmed might be a tool that you guys might be able to use.
Absolutely. And one I did not know about. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for listening. This has been the Legacy Leaders Podcast with your hosts, Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand. Our guest today was Michelle Creeden. For more information about Michelle and the work that she does, or for anybody who is interested in knowing more about personalized debt plans, please visit nationallegal.com, and we'll also link it for you in the show notes. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you both. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Your Life, Your Legacy podcast with Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand. If you enjoyed the show, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. To find out more about Stan and Katie Beth, go to pinnaclelegacylaw.com. You can also find links in the show notes.